The hungry child. The night was cold on the alien world. The human sat near the small fire he had built, his last piece of bread warming in his hand. He had been traveling for days, searching for shelter and safe passage through the strange lands. The world was quiet, except for the wind. But in that silence, he felt he was not alone. From the shadows, two glowing eyes stared at him. They belonged to a small alien girl, thin and trembling, her body covered in dust and ragged cloth. She had been watching him for hours, afraid to come closer. The human pretended not to notice at first, but he felt her hunger in the way she stared at the bread. His heart softened. Slowly, he broke the bread into two. He placed one piece on a rock beside him, then leaned back without a word. The child looked from the bread to his face, fear battling with hope inside her eyes. At last, she crept forward, silent as a shadow. She snatched the bread and stuffed it into her mouth, chewing fast as if someone would steal it from her. The human spoke gently. "You must be hungry," he said. The girl froze, her thin hands gripping the bread tightly. Her voice was small, almost broken. "Hungry, yes." Her stomach growled loudly, proving her words true. He poured some water into a tin cup and placed it beside her. She hesitated, then drank, her throat moving quickly as if she had not tasted clean water in weeks. The firelight showed her more clearly now. She was not more than 10 years old, her hair tangled, her cheeks hollow. But her eyes, golden and sharp, burned with something beyond hunger, determination. The human asked softly, "Where are your people?" The girl lowered her head, whispering, "Gone." He did not press further, he only gave her the second piece of bread. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Her lips trembled, as if words fought to come out. Then she said something strange, something that froze him in place. "I heard you want a wife," her small voice declared. The human blinked, confused. "What?" The girl nodded firmly, even with crumbs on her mouth. "My mother is perfect for you," she said. "She is kind, she is strong, and she is alone." The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the silence that followed. The human stared at the child, unsure if he had heard correctly. She had been starving, yet instead of begging for more food, she was offering her mother. "Why?" The girl hugged her knees, staring at the flames. She spoke again, her voice steadier. "Others want her too, but not for love, not for kindness." Her eyes darkened. They want her to suffer, to be owned. She looked back at the human. "But you gave me food, without asking, without hurting. You are different." The human felt a knot form in his chest. He was a stranger on this world, yet this child was entrusting him with something so heavy, so strange. He whispered, "I don't understand." The girl leaned closer, her eyes bright in the firelight. "You will," she said, "if you come with me." Suspense hung in the night. The human glanced at the darkness beyond the fire, feeling unseen dangers waiting there. Still, the child's words pulled at him. What kind of mother would send her daughter into the night alone? Or was the girl acting on her own desperate hope? The girl stretched her hand toward him, her small fingers trembling but strong with purpose. "Please," she said, "meet her, just once, you will see." The fire flickered, casting long shadows around them. The human did not move, not yet. The silence grew heavy, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the soft breaths of the girl. She looked so fragile, so lost, but inside her voice carried certainty. She truly believed her mother and this human belonged together. It was not a child's random thought. It was a plan. And the human realized this little girl was far braver than her thin frame showed. The stars above seemed to watch as the moment stretched. The human finally nodded, slowly. "I'll meet her," he said quietly. The girl's face lit up with a mix of relief and triumph. She whispered, "Then maybe my mother won't be alone anymore." But as the fire dimmed and the cold night wrapped around them, the human felt a shiver not from the wind, but from the mystery he had just stepped into. For somewhere out there, in the ruins of this alien land, waited a woman he had never seen. A woman whose fate, and perhaps his own, had just been sealed by the hunger of a child. The strange proposal. The morning sun rose weakly over the alien hills. The fire had died, leaving only grey ash. The human stretched his arms and looked at the small girl sitting nearby. She was awake, watching him carefully as if afraid he might vanish. Her hands still held the empty cup he had given her, as though it was her most precious treasure. The night before still echoed in his mind. Her strange words, "I heard you want a wife. My mother is perfect for you," would not leave him. He had not known what to say, yet he had agreed to follow her. Now in the daylight, he wondered if it was foolishness. But the girl's golden eyes carried both desperation and hope, and he could not turn away. He gave her another piece of food from his pack. She ate more slowly this time, as if she trusted he would not take it back. When she finished, she wiped her mouth and stood. Her small figure looked fragile against the wide barren land, but her voice was strong. "Come," she said, "I will take you to her." The human frowned. "Why me?" The girl paused, her thin shoulders stiff. "Because you are different," she said softly. "You gave me food when others would push me away. You looked at me like I mattered." Her voice trembled, but her words cut deep. "My mother has been alone too long. She needs someone who will not hurt her." The human's brow furrowed. He had seen cruelty in this world already, but what could force a child to speak like this? He walked beside her as they left the camp. The ground was cracked, the sky filled with dust. Everywhere felt abandoned, as though life had been drained away. After a long silence, he asked, "Where is your father?" The girl lowered her head, kicking a stone with her bare foot. "Dead," she whispered, "killed in the wars of our people." Her eyes hardened. "After that, they tried to take my mother, but she refused, and so they cast us out." The human's chest grew heavy with unspoken anger. The girl pointed to the hills. "Others will come again. They always do. They say my mother must belong to them. But she refuses, and each time they leave with threats." Her voice dropped low. "One day, they will not leave. They will take her by force." The human clenched his fists. "And you think I can stop them?" he asked. The girl looked at him steadily. "I don't just think. I believe," she answered. They walked for hours. The land grew harsher, filled with ruins of old stone houses, walls broken and roofs fallen. The girl's feet knew the path well. She moved like someone who had lived in the shadows all her life. Finally, she stopped before a half-buried structure, its doorway hidden by vines and stone. "This is our home," she whispered. The human stepped inside. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of herbs. And then he saw her. A tall alien woman stood in the dim light, her back turned as she worked with some clay jars. Her long dark hair fell over her shoulders, and though her clothes were simple and worn, there was a quiet grace about her. The girl ran forward. "Mother," she said, "I brought someone." The woman turned, and her eyes widened. She froze when she saw the human standing in her shelter. Her hand tightened around the jar, almost dropping it. Her voice was soft but filled with shock. "A human." The girl's voice was bright with certainty. "Yes, a human. The one I told you about." The woman's eyes narrowed. "What did you tell him?" The girl stood tall, her small chin lifted. "That you are perfect for him, that you should be his wife." Silence crashed over the room. The woman's face turned pale, and the human almost laughed in disbelief. But the look in her eyes stopped him. It was not amusement, it was pain. Her voice broke. "Child, why would you say such a thing?" The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to back down. "Because you are alone, and he is kind, and I do not want them to take you away." The woman set the jar down, her hands trembling. She turned away, whispering, "You don't understand." The human stepped forward, his voice calm. "She told me others want to claim you, not for love, but for control." The woman stiffened, her shoulders heavy with unspoken memories. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, it is true." The girl grabbed her mother's hand. "Please, listen," she begged. "He fed me. He gave me water. He is not like the others. He will not hurt us." Her golden eyes burned with hope as she looked between them. The mother looked at the human at last, her gaze sharp and searching. "You don't even know us," she said, her voice heavy. "Why are you here?" The human opened his mouth, then stopped. Why was he here? Because a starving child had asked? Because he pitied them? Or was it something else? Something deeper he could not yet name? He met the mother's eyes and spoke quietly. "Because no one should face this world alone." The words hung in the air. The woman's breath caught, and for the first time, her hard eyes softened, just a little. The girl smiled, clutching her mother's hand tighter. The silence of the broken home was heavy, but inside it, something new was beginning, a fragile thread of trust. Yet outside, in the shadows of the ruined village, unseen eyes watched, and dark whispers promised that this fragile peace would not last. The first meeting. The alien woman stood in silence, her sharp eyes fixed on the human. The air inside the ruined shelter felt heavy, almost as if the broken stones themselves carried the weight of old pain. The child still held her mother's hand tightly, her small fingers shaking but refusing to let go. The human shifted uneasily, feeling both out of place and strangely drawn into their world. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the faint sound of wind whistling through cracks in the roof broke the silence. At last, the woman pulled her hand free from her daughter's grasp and crossed her arms. Her voice was low, but firm. "Why are you here, human? What do you want from us?" The human straightened. "I didn't come here for anything," he answered calmly. "Your daughter found me. She was hungry. I only gave her food." The woman's eyes flickered with pain as she glanced at her child, who lowered her head in shame. "You should not trust strangers," the woman whispered sharply. "Not on this world, not anymore." But before she could say more, the girl stepped forward bravely. Her golden eyes glowed in the dim light. "He's not like the others, mother," she insisted. "He gave me food without asking for anything. He looked at me as if I mattered." The human felt his chest tighten at her words, because he realized how rare kindness must have been for this child. The woman's expression softened for a moment, but then her guard returned. She shook her head. "Child, you do not understand how dangerous this is, bringing him here, letting him see us." Her voice trembled, and the human realized her fear was not of him, but of those who might find them. The girl, stubborn as ever, stood tall. "You always told me not to give up," she said, her voice breaking. "But you gave up on yourself, mother. You stopped believing anyone could care for you." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "I don't want to see you lonely anymore." The human felt the woman's pain before she even spoke. Her voice was low, almost breaking. "I am not meant to be with anyone. My people rejected me, and the rest of the world would only claim me like a prize, not love me for who I am." Her hands clenched tightly at her sides. Better to live in shadows than to be bound in chains. The human took a slow breath. He had seen broken souls before, soldiers, refugees, wanderers who had lost everything. The look in her eyes was the same. He spoke carefully. "I don't know your past, I don't know your people, but I know this, your daughter believes in you, and in me." He glanced at the child, who nodded fiercely, hope shining in her face. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line, her emotions hidden behind her proud stance. Still, she could not hide the flicker of doubt in her eyes, or the faint spark of longing that betrayed her. For years, she had carried the burden of survival alone, and now a human stranger stood before her, offering nothing but honesty. "Why?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharp, almost desperate. "Why would you care? Why would you risk anything for us?" The human met her gaze without flinching. "Because no one deserves to be left behind," he said. "Not you, and not your daughter." The child's breath caught as if the words were a gift she had been waiting to hear. She rushed to her mother's side, hugging her tightly. "See? I told you," she whispered. "He understands." The woman closed her eyes for a moment, her body trembling in her daughter's arms. But before she could answer, a sound echoed outside, a faint crunch of footsteps on stone. The human's head snapped toward the doorway, his hand reaching instinctively for the small weapon at his side. The woman stiffened, her eyes narrowing. "They are here," she whispered, fear flashing across her face. The girl's hands clutched her mother's sleeve. "No, not again," she cried softly. The human moved closer to the doorway, his eyes scanning the shadows beyond the vines. Shapes moved in the ruins, dark and slow, like predators circling prey. He could feel the weight of their gaze, watching, waiting. The woman stepped forward, her voice firm now. "You should leave, human," she said. "If they find you here, they will kill you, and worse, they will use you to hurt us." But the human shook his head, his voice steady. "I'm not leaving you to them." The woman stared at him, stunned, as if she could not believe what she had heard. The girl grabbed his arm, her golden eyes wide. "You see? He's not like the others," she whispered. "He will fight for us." The mother's lips parted, but no words came. In her silence, the human saw the truth. She wanted to believe, but fear chained her. She had lost too much already, and trusting anyone meant risking everything. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer. The human raised his weapon, his jaw set. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me first." The girl's small hand squeezed his sleeve tightly, her face filled with both fear and pride. And the woman, for the first time in years, felt something stir inside her, a fragile hope she had long buried. The shadows thickened as the intruders drew near. The ruined walls seemed to close in around them. And in that tense silence, 3 lives, human, child, and mother, stood together for the first time, bound not by blood, but by a fragile promise of trust. The first meeting was not one of peace, but of choice. And the human had already made his. The broken past. The night pressed heavy over the ruined village. Outside the shelter, the footsteps faded, but the silence they left behind was heavier than sound. The human stood at the doorway for a long while, weapon in hand, his eyes never leaving the darkness. The alien woman and her daughter stayed close to the fire inside, their shadows long against the broken walls. At last, the intruders seemed to retreat, leaving only whispers on the wind. The human lowered his weapon, but he did not relax. He turned back into the room, his face grim. "They'll be back," he said quietly, "and stronger." The girl shivered, clinging to her mother's arm, her golden eyes wide with fear. The woman's face was unreadable, her lips pressed in a thin line. But when she looked at her daughter, something in her hardened. She pulled the child into her arms and whispered, "Sleep for now, little one, I'll watch over you." The girl wanted to protest, but exhaustion pulled her down. Soon her breath softened, her small body curled against her mother's side. The human watched silently. There was a gentleness in the woman's movements, a strength wrapped in sorrow. And in that quiet moment, he understood why the child had looked at him with such desperate hope. The mother was not weak, but she carried too much weight alone. The woman glanced at him, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "You should go," she said softly. "You don't owe us anything, and if you stay, they will hunt you too." The human shook his head, his voice steady. "I've already chosen to stay." Her lips parted in surprise, but she said nothing. Instead, she laid her daughter gently on a blanket and sat across from him by the fire. For a while, neither spoke. The crackle of the flames filled the silence. Finally, the woman drew a long breath. "If you truly wish to know," she said, "then I will tell you why they come for me, and why I will never return to them." The human nodded, leaning forward slightly. The firelight painted her face with shadows, showing both her beauty and her pain. "My people," she began, "value strength, but they confuse strength with cruelty." Her fingers tightened around the edge of her cloak. "When my husband died, they demanded I accept another mate, one chosen by the elders." Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to continue. "He was not a kind man. He saw me only as a possession, a way to gain power, not as a living soul." Her eyes darkened. "I refused him. I refused them all, and for that, they cast me out, calling me broken, unworthy." The words hung in the air, heavy with years of silence finally breaking. The human felt a burn of anger in his chest. "To punish you for choosing your own life," he said quietly, "that is not strength, that is cowardice." For a moment, Her gaze softened, surprised at the fire in his tone. But then she looked away. Perhaps, she whispered, but it left me alone, with only my daughter, and the hunters who return again and again to claim what they think belongs to them. Her voice broke on the last word. The human could see the cracks in her armor now. She had built her walls high, not out of pride, but out of pain. He leaned closer, his voice calm but firm. "You are not broken," he said. "You are stronger than any of them, because you chose to fight for yourself, for your daughter." The woman's breath caught. Her hands trembled slightly, but she did not pull away from his words. Instead, she stared into the fire as if afraid to meet his eyes. Her voice softened. "Do you think strength is worth anything, when the whole world is against you?" The human answered without hesitation. "Yes, because strength is not about standing alone, it is about standing together." Her head turned at last, her eyes locking with his. The firelight revealed the storm inside her. Doubt, fear, and something else she had buried long ago. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her not as an outcast, not as a prize to be taken, but as a person worth standing beside. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken truths. Then the girl stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly, her small hand reaching out blindly. The woman leaned down and pressed her daughter's hand to her chest, her eyes glistening. "She is the only reason I endure," she whispered. "Everything I do for her." The human nodded, his voice low. "And she is the reason I'm here." The woman blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" He glanced at the girl, then back at her mother. "She believes in me, in us," he said, "and I will not let her down." For a moment, the fire popped, sending sparks into the air. The woman sat frozen, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came. Her eyes shone with something fragile, something she had buried under years of fear, hope. But before she could answer, the night outside shifted again. A howl rose in the distance, sharp and cruel. The human rose to his feet instantly, weapon ready. The woman's face hardened, fear flashing in her eyes. "They've returned," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They will not wait this time." The human stepped forward, his stance unshaken. "Then let them come," he said firmly. "This time, they will see I do not stand aside." The woman looked at him in silence, her heart torn between fear and a spark of belief. And as the shadows gathered outside, she realized the broken past she had carried might finally meet its reckoning. The enemy's claim. The howl carried through the ruins like a warning. The alien mother stiffened, her eyes full of fear she tried to hide. The child sat up suddenly, rubbing her eyes, her small body trembling as she whispered, "They're back, aren't they?" The human stood firm at the doorway, his weapon tight in his hand. "Yes," he said calmly, "and this time, they mean to take what they believe is theirs." The mother pulled her daughter close, her heart pounding. She whispered sharply, "You should leave, human. If they see you here, they will kill you." But he shook his head, his jaw set with determination. "I already told you, I won't leave you to them." Before she could argue, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed outside. Figures moved through the shadows of the broken walls, their armor clinking faintly. The human counted at least 5, maybe more, all closing in. The child clutched her mother's arm tightly, her golden eyes wide with terror. "They'll take her," she whispered to him. "Don't let them take her." The human crouched to her level, his voice steady. "I won't," he promised. "I'll stand between them and your mother." The girl's face lit with hope, though fear still trembled in her small frame. She believed him, just as she had from the moment he gave her food. The door burst open with a crash of stone. 3 armored aliens stepped inside, their tall frames blocking the firelight. Their eyes glowed cold, filled with cruel purpose. One of them sneered, his voice rough, "So it's true, the outcast hides with a human." He looked the human up and down with disdain. "Do you really think you can protect her?" The mother stepped forward, her shoulders squared, though fear shook her inside. "You have no claim over me," she said firmly. "I will not return with you." The leader laughed harshly. "You think your refusal matters? You were promised, and we will have what belongs to us. He raised his hand, pointing at her like she was an object, not a living soul. Take her, he ordered. The girl cried out, throwing herself in front of her mother. No, she screamed. She's mine, you can't take her. The aliens laughed cruelly, one of them reaching forward to shove the child aside. But the human moved faster, stepping in front of them with his weapon raised. His voice cut through the air like steel. You'll have to go through me first. The laughter died in their throats. The leader's eyes narrowed, a mix of anger and disbelief. A human? He spat. Do you think you can defy us? The human stood tall, his expression hard. I don't think, I know. The tension in the room thickened like smoke. The mother's breath caught as she realized he was not bluffing. This stranger, this man she had only just met, was ready to fight an entire hunting party for her. Her heart pounded with fear, and something else she had long forgotten, the feeling of being worth protecting. The aliens drew their blades, their armor glinting in the firelight. The leader growled, very well, human, if you want death, then death is what you'll find. The girl clung to her mother, whispering urgently, don't let him fight alone. Please, don't let him die. The mother's hands shook, torn between terror and the rising fire in her chest. She wanted to pull him back, to beg him to run. But deep inside, a spark of pride lit within her. For the first time in years, someone stood beside her, not to claim her, not to own her, but to defend her. The first alien lunged forward, swinging his blade. The human dodged swiftly, striking with precision. His weapon cracked against the alien's armor, forcing him back. The others roared in anger, closing in. The child buried her face against her mother, unable to watch. But the mother couldn't look away. Every movement of the human was filled with courage, not fear. Every strike was fueled not by greed, but by the simple will to protect. The leader snarled, enough games. He raised his blade high and charged. The human braced himself, his arms shaking from the force of the battle. The clash of steel rang through the ruins, sparks flying in the firelight. The mother could feel her heart tearing in two. She could not stay silent any longer. She stepped forward, her voice fierce. Stop this, she cried. But her words were drowned in the chaos of combat. The leader shoved the human back against the wall, his blade pressing down. The human gritted his teeth, refusing to yield. For a moment, it seemed he would fall. The mother's breath caught in her throat. Her daughter's cry split the air. Please, save him, mother. Something inside her broke free. She grabbed a broken piece of stone and hurled it with all her strength. It struck the alien's head with a sharp crack, stunning him just enough. The human surged forward, twisting the fight back in his favor. The leader staggered, his eyes blazing with fury. He hissed, this isn't over. With a sharp whistle, he ordered his soldiers to retreat. One by one, the armored figures slipped back into the shadows, their voices echoing in the night. We will return, outcast, and next time, nothing will save you. Silence fell heavy once more, broken only by the crackling fire. The human lowered his weapon, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The girl ran to him, hugging his arm tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. You didn't let them take her, she whispered. You kept your promise. The mother stood frozen, her eyes wide. She looked at the human, bruised, tired, but unbroken. And in that moment, she realized something she had long refused to believe. Not everyone wanted to own her. Not everyone would abandon her. Here was a man who had chosen to fight for her, even with nothing to gain. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. Why? She asked him again. Why would you risk your life for us? The human met her eyes, his voice calm. Because you deserve to live free, not in fear. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her heart, locked away for so long, trembled under the weight of his truth. And as the flames flickered between them, the bond of trust grew stronger. But outside, in the endless dark, danger still waited. The human's choice. The fire had burned low, its glow faint against the ruined walls. Ash drifted in the air, carrying the sharp scent of battle. The human stood still, his chest heaving, sweat streaking down his face. His weapon trembled slightly in his hand, but his eyes never wavered. Across the room, the alien mother held her daughter tightly, her heart still racing from what they had just survived. The girl was the first to speak, her small voice breaking the silence. "You didn't let them take her," she whispered, her golden eyes shining with tears. "You kept your promise." She hugged him tightly around the waist, as if he were the only shield left in the world. The human knelt slowly, resting a tired hand on her shoulder. "I told you," he said gently. "I'll stand between them and your mother, no matter what comes." The mother's lips trembled as she watched them. Her voice was low, almost unsteady. "You risked your life tonight for people you barely know." Her eyes searched his face, as if she could not believe what she had seen. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you fight for us when no one else would?" The human stood, meeting her gaze. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said firmly. "And because I couldn't walk away, not when you and your daughter are hunted like prey." His words carried no hesitation, no hidden agenda, only truth. The woman's heart clenched. For years she had been told she was worthless, that her only value was to be taken and used. But this human had stood before blades and death, not for gain, but for her. The girl broke the silence again, her voice bright and certain. "I told you, mother," she said with a small smile. "He's the one, he's different." Her mother turned sharply to her, her cheeks flushing. "Child, don't." But the girl only pressed closer to the human, holding his sleeve tightly. "Please don't leave us," she whispered. Stay with us." The human's throat tightened at her words. He looked down at the little girl clinging to him, then back at her mother. In that moment, the weight of choice fell heavy on him. He could leave, save himself from a fight that wasn't his. Or he could stay, knowing danger would return, stronger, crueler. The fire inside him already knew the answer. He placed his hand gently on the girl's head. "I won't leave," he said softly, but his voice carried strength. "I'll stay, and I'll fight, until they know they can't take her, can't take either of you." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. Her mother's lips parted, but no sound came. She was caught between disbelief and something warmer, something she dared not name. The night dragged on, filled with unease. The mother patched the small wounds on his arms with herbs she had kept hidden in clay jars. Her hands were steady, though her heart pounded each time she brushed against his skin. "You shouldn't have stayed," she muttered quietly, her voice almost scolding. "They will come back, stronger than before." The human met her eyes, calm and unshaken. "Then let them come," he said simply. "I'll still be here." For the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her, a fragile spark of safety. But with that spark came fear, because hope was dangerous, and trusting him meant risking not just her life, but her heart. The girl, curled up by the fire, had already drifted to sleep, her small hand still clutching the edge of the human's sleeve even in dreams. The mother watched silently, her chest tight. "You've given her something I couldn't," she whispered, "a reason to believe in tomorrow." Her eyes softened, but her voice carried doubt. "But hope can be cruel, human. What if you fall? What if they take you too?" The human leaned forward, his expression steady. "Then I'll fight until my last breath," he said quietly. "But as long as I stand, no one will harm you." His words struck her like thunder, raw, unshaken, absolute. For so long, she had hidden behind walls of fear, but now someone was willing to be her wall. The crack of stone outside shattered the moment. Both turned sharply, the human rising to his feet, weapon ready. Shadows moved again in the ruins, but this time, they did not enter. Instead, a voice carried through the night, cold and mocking. "You've made your choice, human, you will die for it." The human stepped into the doorway, his stance unyielding. "Then try," he called back, his voice steady. The footsteps retreated into the distance, leaving only silence behind. But the threat lingered, heavy as the night itself. The mother stood behind him, her eyes wide. "You've tied yourself to us now," she said softly. "They won't stop until one of us is broken." The human turned to her, his face calm. "Then let it be me," he said. "Not you, not her." Her breath caught, her chest tightening painfully at his words. She wanted to argue, to push him away before he risked more. But instead, her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why would you bear a burden that isn't yours?" He met her eyes, his voice quiet but unwavering. "Because it should never have been yours alone." The fire burned low, but in its faint light, something new had been born. Not just trust, not just survival, but the beginning of a bond forged in choice. The child had asked him to stay, and he had. The mother had doubted, but now she saw him for what he truly was, not a stranger, but a protector. And outside, in the dark, the enemies prepared. They would return with fury, with numbers, with blades sharpened for blood. But inside the ruined home, the human's choice had already been made. He would not leave them, not tonight, not ever. The bond in the dark. The night stretched long and silent, but the silence was heavy, not peaceful. The human sat near the fire, sharpening his blade slowly, the sound of metal against stone echoing through the broken shelter. The alien child slept soundly on a blanket, one small hand still resting against his sleeve, as if she feared he might vanish if she let go. Across from him, the mother sat in the shadows, her dark eyes watching him, her face unreadable. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, "They won't stop, you know." Her words carried both warning and sorrow. They will gather more, and next time, they will not retreat. The human paused, his hand stilling on the blade. "I know," he said simply, his tone steady. She studied him for a moment, then whispered, "Why don't you fear them?" He looked up, meeting her gaze through the firelight. "Because fear doesn't protect anyone," he answered. "But standing, fighting, even when afraid, that does." Her lips pressed together, her heart twisting. For years, she had lived in fear, surviving in silence, hiding in ruins. But this man, this human, spoke as if the weight she carried could be lifted. The child stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly, "Don't leave us." Her mother brushed a hand gently over her tangled hair, her throat tight. "She believes in you," the woman whispered, her eyes returning to his, "more than she has ever believed in me." The human shook his head, his voice gentle, "No, she believes in us." The words struck her harder than she expected. She wanted to look away, but his gaze held her steady. Her walls trembled, those walls she had built to keep hope out. Slowly, she whispered, "And what about you, human? Do you believe in us?" The fire cracked, sparks leaping into the dark. He leaned forward, his face lit by the faint glow. "Yes," he said, his voice soft but unshaken. "I believe no one should carry pain alone, not you, not her." He let out a slow breath. "I believe you deserve more than chains, more than fear." Her chest ached, because his words were not promises of glory, but of something she had never been offered, freedom to choose her own life. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not cold. The girl's steady breathing filled the room, a reminder of why this moment mattered. The mother's eyes softened at last, the hardness melting into something fragile. "You don't know me," she whispered. "You don't know what I've lost, what I've done." The human nodded, "Maybe not, but I know who you are now, and that is enough." Her lips trembled, her eyes glistening. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her as if she were worthy of being seen. Not as an outcast, not as a prize, but as herself. Her voice broke as she asked the question that had haunted her for so long. "And if they come again, if they take me, what then?" The human's jaw tightened, his eyes fierce. "Then they'll have to kill me first," he said, his voice steady as stone. Her breath caught, her heart pounding at the raw truth in his words. No hesitation, no doubt, only choice. The girl shifted in her sleep again, her small hand sliding against his, and in that moment, the bond between the three of them tightened like an unbreakable thread. The woman leaned closer to the fire, her voice barely a whisper. "You are a fool," she said, though her eyes softened, but perhaps a fool worth believing in. The human gave a small smile, tired but sincere. Then believe, he said simply. Outside, the wind howled through the ruins, carrying with it the faint echoes of distant voices. The enemy was not gone. They were gathering, waiting, plotting. The mother felt the fear rise again, but this time, she was not alone in it. For the first time, she felt the strength of another standing at her side. And in that strength, something fragile but powerful bloomed, hope. The fire dimmed, shadows stretching long across the stone. The human looked at her one last time before laying back against the wall. His voice was quiet, almost a vow. Rest, both of you. I'll keep watch. The mother hesitated, then lay beside her daughter, her eyes still on him. And for the first time in many nights, she allowed her body to relax. The girl whispered in her dreams, "Now we're safe, Mama." Tears touched the woman's eyes, because for once, she wanted to believe it was true. Her gaze lingered on the human's silhouette, steady and unyielding against the darkness. She whispered so softly it was almost lost in the wind. "Thank you, for not leaving us." The human didn't answer, but a faint smile touched his lips. And as the night wrapped around them, a bond stronger than fear, stronger than chains, was sealed in silence. The bond of a child's desperate hope, a mother's broken heart, and a human's unshaken choice. But far beyond the ruins, the enemy stirred. Blades sharpened, voices swore vengeance. And when the dawn came, the true test of that bond would rise with it.